rather than discourse. And we have with us Mr. Kingshuk Nag. Mr. Kingshuk Nag has been the editor of Times of India.
I'll introduce myself.
Right, okay. So Mr. Nag, over to you. Okay, thank you.
Hello. Can you hear me? I'm Kingshuk Nag. I'm a journalist. I've been for the last 2 decades with the Times of India. That I think can serve as an introduction. And I'm also going to change the subject. I think I'm supposed to talk about disruptions in Parliament. I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. All of us know about disruptions in Parliament. There's nothing more that I can throw light on which you don't know. All of us see the disruptions all the time in Parliament. All the time we see serious debates going on where there are no people, where there are no MPs. All of us know that. Let's not talk about it. One solution, of course, an extreme solution which can be given, which of course somebody like Suhail Seth will give, is that stop TV proceedings of the House. So when you don't have TV proceedings, so these gentlemen, the performers in the House, will not perform in that way, because after all they are looking only for approval from their constituents. But that's not the solution. Let's talk about the solution. Why is it that we have politicians like this? Why is it that we have got parliamentarians like this who behave like monkeys and who behave in the way they do and who don't take serious policy matters very seriously? I'm going to tell you a story. Murali Maran was the Commerce Minister of India. This is a story he told me. In 1971, when he was just a member of parliament, he said that he realized that the southern states, like Madras, which later became Tamil Nadu, were suffering because of the electoral system that we had in India. You know, we had our first Lok Sabha election in 1951. At that time, there were 489 seats in Lok Sabha. Then in 1957, it went up to, I think, 511. And then in 1961, possibly to 520. And by 1971, it had gone up to 543. How did the numbers increase? After every census, the number of seats in the Lok Sabha would increase. And this increase would be in proportion to the population increase in each state. In other words, if the population increased more in one state, that state would get more number of seats. So in 1971, Mr. Murali Maran realized that the number of seats in the southern states like Andhra Pradesh and Madras state were actually reducing. And in some other states, more specifically the northern states, were going up. In other words, the balance of power was shifting against the states. So he proposed that there should be a ban or rather freeze on the number of seats in Lok Sabha. I think the government of India realized the merit of that. They set up a delimitation commission, and then for 30 years we had a freeze in the number of Lok Sabha seats till 2001 at 543. I remember that a lot of us used to get worried when around the time 2001 was coming, because in 2001, if there was going to be a defreezing of the number of seats, then we would have to take into account the increase in population in the last 30 years. In other words, the numbers could get skewed in favor of those states even more sharply where population had increased, and against those states where population had not increased so sharply. So I remember I had in fact organized a big conference also in Delhi at that time. And at that conference, all the big politicians came, including our current president, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee. And then Mr. Purna Sangma, who lost the presidential election, he was also there, because at that time he was Speaker of Lok Sabha. Then there was the Home Minister of that time, Mr. Indrajit Gupta, and there was Jaswant Singh from BJP. And all of them looked at me in a fashion saying, as if, what a foolish fellow you are. And actually, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee almost told me so from that podium, and he said, Dr. Nag, of course, that was, he gave me the honorific which I have not earned. Why are you bothered? In 2001, we'll extend the freeze for another 30 years. In the end, that's what happened. So under the current dispensation, the number of Lok Sabha seats will remain fixed at 543 till the first census after 2026, which means till 2031. But at the same, so till 2031, you will have 543 seats in Lok Sabha. But in the meanwhile, the population of the country has gone by leaps and bounds. So each Lok Sabha constituency, which might have had about 1 or 2 lakh voters in 1971, will have something like 25, 30, 40 lakhs. What does it imply? It implies that you require a lot more money to win elections, and that's from where corruption begins. I think it will be a very fool to think a fellow can win a Lok Sabha seat by spending something like 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs. I mean, he'll need something like 20 crores. And why does a guy get 20 crores? And suppose you are a rich man's son and you have the 20 crores. Even if you spend that 20 crores, at the end of 5 years you must be even. You may have to break even, otherwise you are a fool. I mean, politics may not be business, but it can be charity also. You can't spend 20 lakhs, 20 crores without breaking even. So where does the 20 crore come from? The 20 crore comes from businessmen and other such sundry characters like real estate agents, like other people who are also making an investment in you. So that's where corruption begins. So instead of talking about good men should enter into politics and good men and in parliament should have high-level debates, and you see in the good old days we had such good men like Mr. Dinesh Trivedi was saying earlier. We have to change the system so that we really get good men into the system, because whosoever will spend so much money, and it can be me also and you also, will behave like that in the same fashion. Tomorrow if I am an MP and tomorrow if my friend Harry Dal is also an MP, he will behave exactly in the same fashion as the current politician. So why blame them? So why can't we think of changing the system? In other words, we are a republic for the last 65 years since 1950. A lot of good has happened in the country. There are a lot of unfulfilled aspirations also. So the times of that first republic that we had is over now. It's time that we usher in a second republic. The second republic should fundamentally alter the system of governance in the country. One of the things we should have is to straight away increase the number of Lok Sabha seats and treble it. If you have 543 today, why can't you increase it to 1500 or 1600 tomorrow? At least the territorial constituencies will be smaller, the number of voters will be much lesser, and when you have far less number of voters, the scope for corruption will also be reduced. That's only one aspect. We have to look at other points also. Today, if you think that your MP represents you, you might be mistaken. Because in the system of elections that we have, which is called the first past post system of election, which we have borrowed from Great Britain, like we have borrowed many things, including English language in which I am speaking. If there are the guy who gets the maximum number of votes wins. In other words, if there are 5, 6, there are 10 candidates, and each of them have got about an average of 10 votes, and the guy who has won 12 votes is the maximum number, fellow who has got the maximum number, he will become the MP. A guy who gets 15 to 20% of the votes, can I be expected to represent only those 15-20%? He does not represent the other 80%. So how is it that do you think that your representative in Lok Sabha will work for you, unless you are part of that 11 fellows who voted for him? That is why you have major problems. That's why you find that your MP is not working for you, your minister is not working for you, and we go to the hell and we go and shout, and so and said will say that newspapers are not writing this, the agenda is different. But the fact of the matter is that it is a systemic problem. In other words, there is a need for fundamentally relooking at the system of elections also. I mean, there are many other systems of election available which are used in other parts of the world. Best system, of course, is in Australia and New Zealand. It's called a single transferable vote system, where every vote cast has a value. In a sense, if there are 7 candidates you cast first preference, second preference, third preference, fourth preference votes. But that may be too much for a country of the size of India and where the levels of literacy are not so high. But we can look at other systems. There are many other systems available. For instance, in Germany, you have got a system which is called the German list system. In my opinion, I think we should go to a system where 50%, for 50% of the constituencies, we can have the current system, that is the FTP system, and for 50% we can use it through a list system. What is the list system? The list system suggests that before elections, the major recognized political parties say that these are my candidates in order of preference for, say, for the number of seats. For instance, if there are 100 seats being contested under the list system, so each political party which is recognized will give 100 candidates' name in order of preference. So if the party gets, say, 20% votes, he is entitled to 20% of the seats. So those 20% will be nominated from the list which is already available and the order of preference. But a prerequisite for that is that we must have, before talking about all this, we must have inter-party democracy. You can't have a system where power flows from a father to a son, and then that fellow will only feel that if there is a fellow called X and he also virtually owns a party, then in his list he will have only his brothers, sons, nephews, daughters, everything. So before that, we must insist on having an inter-party democracy. For that, it has to be insisted upon that each political party should have their own internal polls and etc. These are, of course, talking electoral systems, but nowadays if you see, there is a demand for more and more states in the country. For instance, in Andhra Pradesh, some people want another state called Telangana. There is a demand for Vidarbha. There is a demand for in Gorkhaland. There is a demand for Harit Pradesh. There is a demand for many other states. I mean, India became the way it was in 1956 when the country was reorganized on linguistic lines and so many states were formed. Now that system has worked well or bad, I don't want to say. In some parts it did not serve well, in some parts it did not serve well. So isn't it time that we look at the possibility of creating more states and see whether aspirations and regional aspirations of a lot of people are met by looking at this system, whether we need to create more states. I mean, you don't have to say that you have to create, but you can look at the prospect. The third thing is, we have a dual system of governance. We have a central government and we have a state government. And today, a lot of people complain that even in small states, that they have to travel to the state headquarters, etc., to get their job done. So there may be a possibility of looking into this and deciding whether we should move into a system where we have a three-tier system of governance, where you have the central government, federal government, which looks into a few things, then you have a state government, which looks into even more subjects, and then you have a district level government, which looks at development prospects. In other words, what I am trying to say is 55 years after India became a republic, it's high time that we think in terms of creating a second republic and looking at measures in which way it can be created. This is basically what I was trying to say. And if you ultimately have a second republic, have a better system of elections, then you shall get a better quality of people in Lok Sabha and Parliament, and you will have a better time of debate there. And I'm sure you will have less disruptions, etc. And we will not be standing here to discuss why there is mudslinging and chappal slinging and shoe slinging and mic slinging there. This is my main point, and I'll be happy to open this for discussions. Is there any question?
Mr. Nag sir, I am Ashok Das Gupta. You made a statement saying that you need 20 crores per Lok Sabha seat, a general statement. So I just wanted to say whether you think it is a general statement or exceptions are there, because you know, I can tell you that as far as West Bengal is concerned, the present government, TMC, which had a sweeping victory, And if you calculate the number of seats and 20 crores, I don't think they have the wherewithals to have got so many 20 crores. Nobody will believe this. But they still won the election straight away. Even the government prior to that, they also didn't have that kind of money. So there are exceptional cases in the country where you can get a seat in the Lok Sabha without spending so much of money. The example is West Bengal.
I was talking average figures. In West Bengal, there was an extraordinary situation because we had a government for 3 decades and what should I say, the anti-incumbency was so high that this party had probably had to spend less amount. But I'm sure they have also spent a large amount of money because you can't have elections without organizational skill, with organizational strength. You require jeeps, you require hires, most of whom are, of course, hired, and you have to give them lunch, you have to give them dinner. On voting day, this is where they would have said.
We wonder where they got all this money from because we know. So it's very difficult to say. You're right, what you're saying.
I'll tell you.
It may not be 20 crores per Lok Sabha.
I can tell you where they get money from. You see, in 1991, we have got something called economic liberalization. Unfortunately, these economic reforms in the country have been not consistent with political reform. And if anybody is a student of politics will know that after 1990, from the 1990s onwards, the amount of money being spent in elections is far huger than what it was before. Why? Because there's so much money going around. And how has most of the money been made? Most of the money has been made from real estate development. The money has not come from manufacturing because because today India's rupee is so value of the Indian rupee is so low. And why is it so low? Because the imports are high. Why are the imports high? You'll think it is because of petroleum imports. But no, your imports are so high not only because of petroleum imports, because of the huge amount of imports of electronic items. What does that mean? That you don't produce. So what was this liberalization all about if your manufacturing has not become world class? So to come to the point, all the money comes from real estate. And 20 crores, let me tell you, in West Bengal maybe an exaggeration, but in many parts of this country, it is not an exaggeration. Let me tell you, more money is spent. And with successive elections, more money will be spent. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Amulya Charan from Tata Power. What you have said is about time to get into Second Republic. And all the discussions which have been going on, the governance failure and all those kind of a thing. Perhaps this is one thing worth seriously looking at. Now my question to you is, how does one create a buzz or movement to convert First Republic to Second Republic? Because France and other places, Republic got changed through revolution, monarchy and all that thing. How do we create something like what you're suggesting? I fully endorse with you. All these issues are worth seriously looking at.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think slowly the momentum for that is building up. A lot of people have a lot of angst and that gets reflected in a lot of ways, whether it is Baba Ramdev or Anna Hazare. Anna Hazare made the mistake of trying to simplify things and said he tried to give Lokpal bill as the solution to all problems. So that could not be sold. Also, some mainland parties said that he aligned with certain other political parties. So I think I will say that hanging on for a change, next year's conference could be on the Second Republic. But hearing that he has walked out of the room. I think slowly this awareness will spread and I think more and more people will come to this slowly. That's my feeling. And all of you can also help in carrying this message forward. Yeah, somebody there.
Well, my name is Suleiman. I come from Bhopal. In fact, talks about lots of changes in the political system and they make a lot of sense. And one idea that keep getting discussed all the time in the government circle is that we have too many elections. Most of the time there is a parliament election, there is state election, there are assembly elections, then there are Nagarpalika elections, and sometimes you have Panchayat elections and all kinds of elections. And though it may sound absurd, but the political party is supposed to behave in a particular fashion, and we call it a model code of conduct that they are supposed to follow only during the election. They may not follow it down the line. In reality, what it means, the entire governance comes to a stop when we are in election mode. And because we are having so many elections, so most of the time we are actually not doing anything other than holding the election. So people keep talking about that. Maybe we should now think of a simultaneous election for all levels of governance that you have, whether it's a central government or a state government. And these government institutions should have fixed tenures. Come what may, the tenure should remain fixed so that, we can get some time to actually deliver. I would like some feedback, some reaction on this.
Why simultaneous elections are not held? That is because that has nothing to do with that is to do more with the law and order. There are only so many battalions of CRPF available, so all of them can't be deployed, say, in Assam or West Bengal. So because those same guys will move to some other place. That is one of the primary reasons why the elections are staggered, because a lot of violence takes place in elections and we don't have the law and order machinery. So I don't know what is the solution. You can't say that you will expand the number of CRPF battalions so high that they can be deployed simultaneously all across the country. As far as fixed tenure is concerned, I think we can look at it at the possibility in Second Republic. Another subject we can look at is whether you should need to have this prime ministerial system of governance, whether we should move to a presidential system.
States and bad smaller states. Since I know that you're an expert on Telangana, can you tell us if that's going to be a good one or a bad one, or will it happen at all? Thank you.
Dynasty principle, I didn't say no to dynasty principle. I said when you have a political party, you must have elections there. You can't say that I will have a political party which I run like my family, but the same fellows, when they go and become elected members, they will behave in a fashion that they are very democratic. That's what I'm saying. That democracy has to begin at home. So it has to begin with the structure of a political party. That's what I said. Otherwise, you will have, and I remember this always, because that Lalu Prasad Yadav, when he's caught in the forward scam, he'll put his wife Rabdi Devi as the CM, whose only job before that was to run the kitchen. And I remember the governor used to tell me that time how she could not even sign her name. Rabari, she used to write. So that's what I was saying. As far as Telangana problem is, whether Telangana will be good for the people, I don't know. It depends on which part you come from. In Andhra Pradesh, there is a vertical split. And when you talk to people, from their answer, you know from which part of the state they come from. So I will not, though of course I don't think there are too many people from here, but still I will not risk answer. But let me tell you, at the heart of the problem is the capital city of Hyderabad. Nobody knows what to do with it. In the sense, both of them want it. Actually, the original citizens of Hyderabad, the Muslims, they have become marginalized. Nobody is bothered about them. You are only talking about whether it belongs to Telangana or whether it belongs to the people from Andhra who came there, settled there and built a city, rebuild a city. But nobody is talking of what happens to the original citizens. Thank you very much for bearing with me. Thanks.